Welcome to Mixed Kid Monologues. I'm your host, Tiffany Ramm, and I believe that we can end racism. But first, we have to acknowledge that it even exists. For those of you who haven't seen episode 1 yet, I will recap it really quickly for you because it's kind of essential to the rest of the episodes to come, at least in regards to my personal story. And so in episode 1, I shared with you one of the most important, most impressionable experiences I had at a very young age with racism. I actually was denied access to my grandfather, my step-grandfather, because he was racist. And I talked about how that then impacted my ability to trust my parents, my biological mother and my stepfather, with anything related to race or racism. Because in that moment, it became very clear that they essentially have my back on everything in life except racism. That for them, racism was not a deal breaker. And for me as a young kid at the early age of about 6-7 years old, that's a big deal. Because I would go on to have additional experiences, negative ones, with racism and never told my parents about it. I would have to either go through that myself or with siblings or with a teacher or a mentor or another mixed kid. So I want you to understand that because of that one experience at a very young age happening in my own family, I then didn't trust my parents with one of the most important parts of my identity, which is my race. I am mixed, biracial, white and black. My parents raised me the only way they knew how, which was white. So I didn't trust my parents with race. They weren't the down white parents. They, aren't wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt and rallying with me in the streets. That's just not my parents. So when these next few stories happened, I'm going to try to do 2 today and process with you how experiencing that and going through these additional racist experiences and not sharing them with my parents really impacted me as a child, an adolescent, and into adulthood. So, like I said, at about 6-7 years old, my grandfather said he didn't want anything to do with me and my brother because we were mixed. Well, basically because we were colored. And that really, impacted me. I didn't know if I could trust any of my family members or my step-family members because I didn't know who else might be a closet racist too. Anyways, so let's fast forward a little bit to about middle school. I'm one of, at this point, 5 or 10 brown people total. That includes Asian, Latino, blacks in my town. And one day I get on the school bus to ride home from middle school, and I get a spit wad in the back of my head. Now, I'll be honest, there's no rumors, there's no stories going around like there's a tax spitter somewhere. No, this one isolated incident, someone spit in my hair. I didn't know which someone. I just turned around immediately, completely grossed out, and there was some people pointing at this seat full of 3 young white girls, and they were snickering, and I didn't know what to do. My immediate reaction as a middle schooler, I don't know, what are you, 12, 13 years old in middle school? I went back, and because I didn't know which one of them spit, I just gave them a swift smack across the face, all 3 of them, whoosh, because I didn't know. And nobody had had these conversations with me in regards to what to do if someone disrespects you. No one had ever had a conversation with me about, Tiffany, if someone spits in your hair, you're beautiful, long. At this point, my hair was this curly, this natural, but all the way to the mid of my back. And it was free, and it was just out, and it was flowing, and these girls had spit in my hair. I slapped all 3 of them. I went back to my seat, everybody was silent, and I rode home. I didn't tell my mom what had happened. I just went home. And I washed my hair, and I thought to myself, what the heck is going to happen? I was already a very anxious young kid. At this point, my brother was incarcerated in prison and soon to be released from prison. But my brother's white. So I just had a lot on my mind. There was a lot going on with the family dynamics, and I just didn't tell my mom that 3 little white girls had spit in my hair, and I slapped them across the face. It wasn't until the next day that we got a phone call and I got called into the principal's office where they noticed me a citation for my suspension. They said, Tiffany, do you know why you're suspended? I said, probably because I slapped those 3 girls across the face. And they said, oh, you're not going to deny that you did that? I said, absolutely not. because they spit in my hair. And I don't know any other appropriate punishment or consequence for doing something so vile and disgusting as to spit a loogie into somebody's hair. That's okay, well, you retaliated with physical violence, so we're obligated, we have to suspend you. I think it was 3 days out of school suspension. And I said, fine. Not in that point did I say, oh, they spit in my hair because I'm black. This isn't fair. I shouldn't get a suspension. I was a straight A student. I had been since elementary school. I'd never done anything wrong in my life, not a tardy. Straight A student. And for some reason today, I slapped 3 girls in the face. Nobody sat me down and had a conversation about how I felt about it or what was going to happen to those 3 little girls. According to the administrators, they felt that they got their consequence, that I had slapped them across the face. So of course I got home and my mom had asked me, I showed her the suspension notice and told her I couldn't go to school for 3 days. She said, what did you get suspended for? And I said, well, Mom, I slapped 3 girls in the face. She said, why would you do that? Because I had never done anything like that before. I was a straight A student. I was the good kid. Because they spit in my hair. Oh, that's disgusting. Okay, that's fine. My mom calculated in her brain that that is a disgusting thing and slapping them face was an appropriate consequence for what they had done to me. But there was no further conversation about why did they spit in my hair. She didn't even ask me, like, did you do something to them? Absolutely not. I was sitting like 3-5 seats in front of them. What could I have possibly done to them? I can't see them. But I know now, and I knew then, exactly why they spit in my hair. It's not only just the only black kid on that bus at the time. Later on, I would have another black kid on my route later on in high school. One other black kid on my route in high school. Another mixed kid. But I knew exactly why. And it was because I was black. Because my hair didn't look like theirs. Because my skin didn't look like theirs. They decided they thought it would be funny to spit in my natural hair. It's interesting, again, that it wasn't until about a month ago, or a few weeks ago, that I even told my mom or brought up this story again. That she's been so upset that I've been so vocal about ending racism, and that it's real and it's still here. That all the slave masters didn't just die off. They taught their children exactly how they thought, and their children after them, because that's how behavior is learned. It's taught. And she gets her panties in a bunch and she gets all upset. And I'm like, well, Mom, you don't know all the things that I've been through. Because she never created a space for me to be safe to talk to her about it. One, because of denial or guilt or discomfort. I never told my mother, yeah, those girls spit in my hair because I'm black. Because she has no ability to process that. She didn't know what to do. People, it's really important to have these conversations with your kids, with your family members, with your loved ones, to be open-minded and understand that, yes, just because of the color of my skin, I had a different experience in school than you. And yeah, everybody gets bullied, but everybody gets bullied for different reasons. And in my case, in that moment, it was strictly because of the color of the skin. Not that I was fat or that I was wearing the wrong, designer clothes or whatever. It was simply because I was brown and they weren't. And they thought that was funny. Of course, because I never told my mother about that incident, when this next one happened, I didn't tell her again. My brother did time in prison for 2 years. And by the time I had hit high school, he had been released from prison and come to live with us on, house arrest. Well, word had caught in my small town, had spread throughout the town that this gangster thug was moving into the city. I think what it cracked everybody up is that my brother's white. My brother really was a former gang member who basically became like the Eminem, the white rapper of the town. He would drive around in his 87 Mercury Cougar and bang super gangster rap. And I don't know why that encouraged everybody to do what came next. My brother, again, was on house arrest at the time that this story takes place. And I remember getting off the bus one day in high school. I think I was a freshman, so probably like 14 years old. And as I get off the bus, this had never happened before. I had ridden the bus now at this point with these people for like anywhere between 6 and 8 years. I know every single person on this bus by name. I probably know your addresses. I know your parents. I know everything about you. This is a small town. I graduated with a class of 239 people. I can probably name everybody by first and last name. But that day, for whatever reason, they decided it would be funny to yell the N-word out the window at me. I didn't really know what to do. Again, I know everybody on this bus. Why did you think that was the cool thing to do? Never until this day was it appropriate, okay, giving you the thumbs up, have I ever done anything to let people know that I might be okay with you yelling the N-word out the window at me. Nonetheless, F-word, N-word. So I went inside. And like I said, my mom wasn't the safe place. I don't even think she was home from work yet. But my brother was home on house arrest. And I ran inside and I told him what happened. I said, someone on the bus just called me the N-word. What do I do? I was in tears because I just didn't know, like, what do I do? Like, that's not okay. I don't ever want anybody to yell it at me again. And I need them to know it's not okay. My brother did what I guess any gangster would do to protect his family. My brother took me in his car. He said, let's go. We're going right now. Where's the bus? My brother gets me in the car, drives, chases down the bus to the next stop, and he proceeds to enter the bus and threaten everybody on the bus. And told them, listen here, if any other mothers in this bus ever say the N-word to my sister again, I promise you, you will never speak words in life again. Or something of that nature. Needless to say, nobody on that bus ever spoke the N-word again. Because I'm pretty sure they believed my brother. That if they ever said it again, they would never speak words out their mouth after that moment. What's really critical about these two stories that's unfortunate is that both times in my life, when I was very young, when I was faced with blatantly racist moments, violence, threats were all that worked. I had to slap those 3 little girls in the face in middle school to get them to realize you can't do that anymore. My brother had to physically get on a bus and chase down middle school and high school students and threaten their lives, their physical well-being, to make sure they never spoke that word again. It's unfortunate that that's what shaped my reality about racism. We should thank God that I didn't come on to Malcolm X really like that till later on in life, because I probably would have been militant like that, any means necessary. Because early on in life, that's the only examples that really saved me. It wasn't until later on in life that I realized that there's other ways to fight racism. Because early on, the only things that worked was violence. Again, my mom didn't even learn about that second story until, again, about 6 months ago. She seemed flabbergasted that I and my brother, neither one of us had told her, but we both knew why. My mom's answer to dealing with racial issues is, what am I supposed to do? So here's where I want to critically process with you. Like I said, this series isn't necessarily about having all the answers. Step 1 is acknowledging that racism even exists. There's a lot of people out here who think that, the racist people are dead. They're dying off. They're aging off. No, they taught their family members, their grandchildren, their children, their nieces, their nephews, these thoughts, these ideologies. We have to acknowledge racism is here, and what do we want to do about it? And hope that your kids, your family members, your sisters, your brothers, your students don't have the first early lessons that I did. That violence is the only thing that works. Unfortunately, history has taught us that. Revolutions. People complaining about rioting and looting, but when in reality, that's all that's ever worked with revolution. Boycotting, marching, wars. All for revolution, for rights, to be treated like equal human beings. So I never told my mother about those stories and the ones that will come in the next 2 following episodes. Never told my stepfather. To this day, I don't think my stepfather knows about either one of those stories. To my family, they think I'm a bitter Black woman because I'm using this platform to share these stories with you. I want you to understand how much this impacts a young person. It took me a very long time to get comfortable sharing these stories, expressing what really happened to me, and really dealing and coping with the fact that this was racism. There was no other explanation than racism. You don't like me because of the color of my skin. You want to make me feel bad because of the color of my skin. It wasn't just that you don't like me or that's a stereotype and you keep it in your head, but the fact that you felt so compelled to, you had an impulse to physically do something negative to me as a result. Spitting on my hair because you don't like the color of my skin, just because I'm different than you. Yelling the N-word out the window, what do you think that the intention of that was? To elicit a negative response from me. It took me a long time to process that this was racism. Why? Because I was raised in a house where they attempted to tell me we were colorblind, that we don't see the color of your skin. I tell you right now that if that's your concept, if that's your construct, if that's your ideology, it's wrong, it's false, it's flawed. We're not colorblind. We see color, just like an apple's red or green and an orange is orange. We see the color, but we shouldn't treat people differently or negatively because of that color. Yeah, you might treat me differently. You might speak a different language. You might, address my cultural differences and salutations, but it doesn't mean you treat me less than. We do see color. You should acknowledge difference. Difference is good. Difference is variety. Difference is what makes us strong. But it doesn't mean you treat me less than. Doesn't mean I'm less than a human than you. Doesn't mean I don't deserve the same amount of empathy and patience and love and understanding. Difference is good. I share these stories because, yes, it's true. People treated me negatively throughout my life just because of the color of my skin. Yes, I also experienced sexism. I've also experienced homophobia. I've experienced the range of discrimination. But this specifically, these experiences, this series is dedicated to the reality that racism really does exist. And I had negative life experiences just because of the color of my skin. If you're a parent to a mixed kid, I really need you to think about that. Are you having these conversations with your children? Are you letting them know, as much as mom and dad love everybody and we treat everybody with kindness and we embrace and accept difference, you might encounter people who don't. My mother always says, when I try to bring these topics up to her, what was I supposed to do? Do something. Parents of mixed children, you need to be prepared and provide an environment where if something does happen negatively to your child, they feel comfortable coming to process it with you. Even if all you do is provide a space to listen and validate their feelings. I didn't have that as a child. I had a lot of other areas of my life where I was very supported. My mom had my back all the way. We have a loving, amazing relationship, but this was the one area I never told her anything about. Why? Because she didn't create a loving, empathetic, supportive environment for me to speak on these issues. So she dismissed that whole part of my life. You want to make sure you create a place where your children, if something negative happens to them in regards to race, they feel comfortable coming home and telling you. Hey, mom, dad, someone called me this name today and I didn't like it. Be there for your kids. Be present. Now, whether that's just you talking to your kid or you driving up to the school and making a formal complaint, demanding a change, that looks different for you as a parent. I'm not going to tell you what road in that regard is right or wrong. But the first step is creating the space for your child to feel safe to have the conversations. When I tell you the amount of mixed kids who have already flooded my inbox, telling me about their stories and how they weren't supported and they felt marginalized on both sides, white and black, or white and Asian, or black and Asian, or Korean and white, we need to be sensitive to the fact that the mixed kid experience is unique. Be willing to have the courageous conversations and create an environment where your child, your niece or nephew, your students can come discuss these issues with you. And if you're not comfortable with them, you have some work to do on yourself. You need to self-reflect. What makes me uncomfortable about these conversations? What don't I like about these conversations? That's where the work begins. This episode's a little shorter, which is okay. We're not live. I thought we were going to be. I knew there was going to be a lot of questions. So what I encourage you today to do is like this episode and share it with somebody that you think could benefit. In addition to subscribing to Tiff Talk TV so you get notifications for future shows. Also, please write a comment below in regards to a question or share your story about your own experience, your recommendations, what worked for you, or maybe what didn't work for you. Use this platform as an opportunity to start or expand the conversations, to create a support group where maybe you don't have the support. So again, subscribe to Tiff Talk TV, like and share this episode, and comment. Please comment. Share this with a mixed kid you know, any kind of mixed kid, because the next few episodes are going to wrap up some of my stories, and then we're going to move into interviews with other mixed kids. Like I said, unfortunately, I'm not alone. And like I said, a lot of us mixed kids, our first experiences with racism were in our own families, immediate or extended. So please, remember, this is about empathy, learning. I don't have all the answers, but I definitely am willing to have the conversations. I truly believe that we can end racism, but first we have to acknowledge it even exists. Thank you and have a good night.